Hey everyone, before we start the show, I just want to get some plugs out of the way. If you enjoy this podcast and you're into wrestling, check out the Nerds and Marks podcast or Marty and Sarah Love Wrestling. If you're not getting your fill on movie and entertainment discussion, then check out the Entertainment Buffet podcast. If you want to dive into the world of video games, I highly recommend the Darkcast by my friends over at darkstation.com. Listen to them cover important topics and interview men and women from all over the industry. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hello everyone and welcome to Shelved. I am your host, Jeremy Meyer. Now I know we covered a Spider-Man episode pretty early on in the podcast. I think it was episode 5, but today we're covering another one because of course Spider-Man Homecoming is out now. Now unfortunately, I will not be able to see the movie this weekend, which is really unfortunate for me because anyone who's listening knows that Spider-Man is my all-time favorite, and while I have reservations about this movie from the trailers and everything, I kind of look at it as, hey, that's not my Spider-Man, just because of the way they take things from other Spider-Man lore and mix it in with this one. And I mean, it looks good. I'm sure it's going to be great. It's a Marvel movie. They haven't made one I hate yet, so I'm sure it'll be fine. But before Homecoming, I thought it'd be fun to take a look at another Spider-Man script, and we are looking at a script from 1983 when Canon Films owned the rights to Spider-Man. And it's a really different kind of Spider-Man script, different from any of the ones we've covered so far. So it's a really interesting one to talk about. But I had my good old buddy Maggie back to talk Spider-Man with me. She's a big comic book fan, a big Spider-Man fan, just like me. So we had a lot of fun sitting down to talk about this one. So I really hope you guys enjoyed. I think this is a fun episode. So sit back and get ready for 1983's version of Spider-Man. How they keep it fresh. They give her a different compact.
Yeah, there's also Super Sailor Moon, Eternal Sailor Moon, but yeah.
There's a new Sailor Moon cartoon, right?
Yes, Sailor Moon Crystal is on Hulu.
Is it good? I heard a lot of people talking about it when it first came out. Is it good?
Well, here's the thing. It almost suffered, I think, the animation started out really bad.
Okay.
They actually, to the point where they went back and fixed it for the DVD releases.
I would say the same thing about Dragon Ball Super. The animation's really terrible.
Really bad. And it's gotten better. For some reason, it hasn't. I'm like a huge Sailor Moon fan. I have all the comics. I collect the art books. I have wands, and obviously I have a Sailor Moon tattoo. I have a giant tattoo of a moon. I have
to me, it was that show that was on before Dragon Ball Z when I got home from school.
That's what Dragon Ball Z was, the show after Sailor Moon. So yeah.
And I've caught bits of it, and I could see they had the Rose guy. I know nothing about Sailor Moon.
It's great. Sailor Moon is the reason I'm a morning person.
Really?
Because it used to be on at 6 a.m. every morning. So I trained myself to wake up at 6 a.m. when I was like 4 or 5 years old to watch it. And I like Channel 2. Some really it was really strange. I don't know why I played, but I watched it every single morning. I had DVDs, the VHS tapes, the dolls, everything.
What do they do? Like, what is the main concept of the show? I've never understood. I mean, we don't need to go super deep into it.
It's 5 girls who are, kind of just gotta save the world each season. There's a big bad, and each bad has has their minions. I mean, it's a pretty Monster of the Week TV show.
Yeah.
But pretty much the 5 girls are, one of them's the Moon Princess reincarnated on Earth. That's Sailor Moon.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
And then the dude was a reincarnate as well, right?
Of her, like, star-crossed lover.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they're getting back their memories in the first season.
I kind of caught the end of the season where it was revealed who she was. Like
That's the first season, yeah.
So I was kind of getting into that. And I was only seeing like the 10 minutes of each episode.
Well, yeah, the thing is, the series is 200 episodes.
Yeah.
What is like covered in the first 50 episodes is like 2 books of the comic.
Oh, okay.
So it's a lot. I like.
Is the manga still going?
No. Only 18 volumes long. Ended in like the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, ended in the 90s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they actually re-released it recently. It used to be really hard.
Do you have them all?
I have them all, and I have all the re-released ones as well.
I might need to borrow the first one from you, just to see if I like it.
I don't know. It's not everyone's cup of tea. It's, of course, my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, I'm not expecting to like it, but I'm open to it. I don't read a lot of manga or watch a lot of anime. I have, like, the 4 that I love, and then anything else is just kind of like, maybe.
Yeah, for a while, no one in the U.S., a license ran out. No one in the U.S. was licensed to make show the TV show, to make the comic. And this is, like, when anime started to get big in the U.S., you could not get Sailor Moon.
Was it like Toonami that really made it?
Well, this was like during Toonami you could get that stuff because I collected during like 7th and 8th grade.
Yeah.
Maybe 4th and 5th probably I got my collection going.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden you could get nothing.
Really?
Nothing, because there were no license.
That's
I could
crazy.
find like toys and bargain bins. I'd always be at comic book conventions. Then about like 3 years ago, the new series, they re-released a new English dub. There's new printings of the comics.
So is there the old show, is that done and over, and then they've done like a new one recently?
Yeah. The original, the Crystal is like Kai.
Yeah, okay.
Where, but it's been newly animated, and it cuts out.
That's so much better.
And it cuts out a lot. It's like the first season it's like 10 versus 50 episodes.
Because they have so much filler just to.
Yeah, so they just pretty much are telling the story of the comic versus the story of the original.
That's what Kai did, and which I was fine with. The only reason I didn't like Kai is because they changed some of the voice actors. So that was the only reason I didn't like it.
The thing is, because Sailor Moon had a lot of pretty much censorship, because they tried to make it from like a young, it was like a teenage girl show to like a young kids show. So they removed some dialogue. Like famously, they turned like two lesbians into cousins to explain why they're like, I'm so happy we're close because we're cousins. Like,
okay.
And they re-released everything with like much better translations recently, but I'm like,
that's always a fun thing.
But it's not the same voices, and some of the voices that I want. Sailor Moon's best like human friend has an insane New York accent in the comic. I mean, in the comic, in the original show,
it's totally different in the new one.
And she just got a normal voice. I'm like, no,
I hate that.
Where's her insane, unrelated accent?
I experienced that from the opposite end when Persona 4, the video game, came out on Vita. I guess they changed some of the voice actors, and that game had a huge fan base when it was on PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, that's not my voice for Chie. And I'm like, I really like this Chie voice, because I had never played the old.
This one is so much better, but I want like.
But it's not what you loved. It's the same thing for me with Dragon Ball. I need those voice actors. I need the music that I watch, because I know people are particular to the Japanese music. I prefer the Bruce Faulkner soundtracks. I own them all on iTunes. I just really love that stuff. That's fine.
Well, with I was gonna say transition.
Yeah.
My first experience with Spider-Man was the Spider-Man cartoon, the 90s Spider-Man cartoon.
That was my introduction as well.
And the main thing I remember is that intro with Carnage and Venom actually kind of freaked me out. I didn't like when he ate, Carnage,
he kind of like swallows the screen or whatever.
I don't like it. It really freaked me out as a kid.
I was looking up on Amazon the other day. They have no box set of that show.
I had to watch the I was reading this of the script. I had to watch the intro to it, and
really?
just loving it.
It's been a long time since I've watched it. I at one point had all 5 seasons burned onto DVDs that I had gotten from somewhere, and I was like, do they sell this? And like they sell individual DVD sets, but not like seasons. It's like, oh, here's the Venom arc, here's the Green Goblin stuff, but you can't buy the whole show anywhere, and that's really frustrating. But I watched it. It was probably going on 10 years ago now. I watched the whole series, and it's rough. Like some stuff holds up. Like the Venom stuff is still pretty good, And I remember the show. I thought it was one of those cartoons that had a lot of reused animation, like the Flintstones, like scrolling backgrounds.
That's
and stuff
the
like
original
that.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, and it didn't, and I was surprised. It was like a lot better than I remember. Like it's not as good as Batman the Animated Series. That show, you watch it today and it holds up, but it still has some good episodes and some good stuff. But it's pretty cheesy. It's definitely a younger demographic.
Yeah, I can't remember a lot of it. I remember the song. But
yeah, even the song to me is a little iffy. I remember specifically the Venom stuff because Venom's one of my all-time favorite. I mean, it's kind of obvious for Spider-Man fans.
Yeah,
he's one of my all-time favorites. So I remember that stuff pretty clearly and the Carnage stuff. But a lot of the other stuff just is kind of in and out of my memory. Mm-hmm. And I think the original PlayStation game might have been based off the cartoon a bit. I think it was the same voice actor.
Okay.
I could totally be
wrong about this. I've only played one Spider-Man game.
See, I play every Spider-Man game.
Yeah, I can't remember which one.
For me, Spider-Man's my all-time favorite comic book character. I don't know where he falls for you.
I think that the original, this Spider-Man that I kind of got introduced to is probably Ultimate Spider-Man because I started reading comics around the time the Ultimate stuff started coming out, and it was so accessible.
And having not read a ton of the Amazing Spider-Man, I've read some choice books. I recently got a bunch for my birthday. I got like 4 Amazing Spider-Man books.
Awesome.
Ultimate Spider-Man to me is not only the greatest Spider-Man story ever written, but it's one of the greatest series of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was so nice to have such a long series with a consistent creative team.
Yeah,
I think that did it such a benefit that you don't see anymore.
And it has an ending, which is the best part to recommend. If somebody wants to recommend a Spider-Man book, hey, read Ultimate Spider-Man. It's some of the best writing. I love the art. I hate when they switched. Because it was Ultimate Spider-Man, then it became Ultimate Comic Spider-Man for 3 or 4 volumes, and it was a different artist, and it was still good, but after having that same team for so long...
Yeah, you really get used to it.
Yeah, and they do kind of leave a couple hanging threads in the story. They eventually kind of address them, but there's a little... the transition's weird, but then the last arc, I think, is, the death of Peter Parker. They bring back the original artist, and it was one of those things I didn't even notice until I was halfway through that book. I was like, oh, wait, it's the old art again.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's so good you don't even notice, but when you first get there, it's a little jarring. Mm-hmm. But Ultimate Spider-Man is amazing. And even the what's his name, Miles Morales stuff that comes afterwards, I really love that. Just give me Brian Michael Bendis writing Spider-Man.
Yeah,
and I'm all over it.
So I've pretty much I've read a lot of that. I can't even tell you what I went up to. I never finished it.
You never finished Ultimate?
No, it just...
I have it all if you need to borrow
I might
it.
actually, yeah. And then there was one, I'm trying to remember the author. Because they just had a lot of his stuff at the library. So again, I just picked up what was available. J. Michael, what's his last name? You know who I'm talking about?
No, that's the actor from The Office, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a long Polish name, which I should know.
It's not Krasinski, is it? Isn't
that
the guy from The Office?
Yeah, John Krasinski is the guy from The Office. It's
I feel like I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I was going to say my own last name because it's something like that. It's like a long, It's been a long time since I've read any Spider-Man stuff, but I know he had a long run on it. I read a bunch of his stuff.
As far as Amazing Spider-Man stuff, the only writer I know by name is Dan Slott because he's still doing it.
Yeah.
And his stuff has been really great. He did I can never remember not when Marvel did their all new, all different Marvel, which is their current run. The run before that. I think it started in 2011 or 2014. That run of Spider-Man was kind of where I jumped into the Amazing Spider-Man stuff. And it was really good. I love the art. It was where they introduced Silk for the first time, who I really love that character. Mm-hmm. And Dan Slott was writing that. So I've read most of his stuff, like other Amazing Spider-Man stuff. I don't know who I've read. It's just kind of random books that I've picked up on the apps and stuff.
That's what I like. I like to... Yeah, just read what I can get my hands on. That's kind of what I'm interested in.
Yeah, like a goal of mine, which is insane to think about because it's 700 issues, but would be to collect the entire Amazing Spider-Man run.
That's an ambitious goal.
Yeah, it is. And I have all of Ultimate Spider-Man from the beginning to the Miles Morales up until the point where they smash the universes together and Ultimate is no more. I have that entire run. So that's kind of, I look at my collection and I'm like, I'm really glad I have that. But anything else is kind of like, I would like to, but we'll see. So Spider-Man in the movies. Spider-Man 2 is still my all-time favorite comic book movie. Homecoming is coming out this weekend.
Yeah.
Are you seeing it this weekend? I unfortunately have to wait.
I cannot convince my husband to see anything Spider-Man related.
Why?
He hates Spider-Man.
Why?
I don't know.
Why did you marry him?
He is so stubborn when it comes to very odd things. And one of them is like really weird things. Like Xboxes are very dumb.
I mean, the console generation thing, I understand.
And he hates Spider-Man. I think because he doesn't like Tobey Maguire and has refused to acknowledge that the movies might be better or different.
Oh my god!
And then
did he see Civil War though?
Yes.
What do you think of Civil War?
He liked it. He just likes Spider-Man's dumb, and that the Punisher should kill him is usually. What
I love the Punisher.
Yeah,
the
Punisher is his favorite. And I think that's part of it. Is he likes darker, grittier comics. So Spider-Man is the direct opposite to that.
Yeah.
And so he's just like, well, it's dumb. It shouldn't.
You need to sit him down and work this out because that makes no sense to me.
He would not watch the last two movies.
How do you not watch Spider-Man 2 and be like, this is one of the greatest comic book movies ever made? That scene on the train alone
He has not seen the last two movies, and he will not see this one. So.
He doesn't need to see the last two. I'll defend Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 to a degree. The first one I'm kind of iffy on, but I think it's decent.
Yeah.
The second one is like where I finally believed Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, but that movie has a lot of flaws with they were trying too much to build a universe instead of focusing on the story. But I do think that movie has some of my favorite action scenes out of any Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, the Jamie Foxx guy was...
I liked Jamie Foxx. I think the problem with that movie is there's not enough of him.
Maybe.
And they definitely played him a little weird.
Yeah.
But I thought he looked awesome. And I love the effects of it.
Yeah, I didn't like the nerdy one for some reason.
Yeah,
that was, I'm like, just stop. It's an overdone trope.
My wife doesn't watch a lot of comic movie movies, but we watched that one. We were staying at a hotel some night, and I brought a bunch of movies, and that was a movie I had. And I'm like, oh, well, you haven't seen this. She hasn't seen the first one. She doesn't care. And I was like, well, she knows I like Spider-Man. She's like, all right, well, let's watch it. And she actually really liked that movie. Nice. And it's one she brings up every now and then because she really liked Electro. Like, she thought he looked cool. So that's something that sticks in it. But to me, the direction, like Mark Webb, the way he made those movies look is incredible.
Yeah, they were like stylized and they were nice looking.
Especially the scenes that take place at night because it was dark, but there's so many bright colors, especially with like the police sirens and stuff. I love the way he makes those movies look. And I wish we would have got a third one because I think they could have course corrected, and I'm not completely sold on Tom Holland yet. I really liked Civil War. I thought Spider-Man was fine. But I'm looking at this new movie, and...
How old is he?
In real life?
Yeah.
I think he's like 18 or 19.
Hey, because he looks young. And I kind of like that for my Spider-Man. You know, I like... Because, I don't think Tobey Maguire was ever a realistic...
No.
Even like...
They had him in high school for like 5 minutes anyway.
Yeah, and they're just like, oh, you know. But I think that... I don't know. I honestly have not seen that many trailers kind of purposely because
they've been putting out so much footage of this movie. It's kind of hard to avoid.
Saw like a really weird I keep getting like ads like that are just showing me
him
stuff.
Sneaking into his room because that's one I see a lot.
Yeah, like on Facebook I just keep scrolling past and and I'm like, all right, I don't want to see too much because
you've read the Miles Morales stuff, right?
Yeah, some of it.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure I lent you my books. Yeah. So his friend Genki in Miles Morales is Peter's friend in this movie. And stuff like that kind of bugs me. It's like, this is not my Spider-Man. Like, where's Harry? And I understand they're trying to do it differently because we've already seen it twice before. But it's just, as a Spider-Man purist, like I say, is my all-time favorite. It's one of those things I look at and I'm just like, I'm sure it's going to be a good movie, but these things kind of eat at me inside.
I like that they decide, like, oh man, this is our third thing, and if we do it the same again, it's going to be...
Yeah, and I understand, and I think it's a victim of because this is the third time.
Yeah, but they got to do some changes. But it's good that they're still drawing on the same universe. You know, they're drawing on Spider-Man stuff. It's just not the same.
And, I mean, everyone says the movie's great, so maybe, I don't know. But this movie that we read is less so. And speaking of you like a young Spider-Man... he's straight up 20 years old at the beginning of this.
Yeah, there were some really weird things where I thought, like, why change this in this script?
Yeah.
A lot of Spider-Man basics starting with high school.
Yeah. Which everyone always clamors about, like, oh, Peter Parker should be in high school for so long. I wonder if that comes from Ultimate Spider-Man, because from the early Spider-Man stuff I've read, like the way 60s Spider-Man, high school doesn't seem to be a big part of it. But obviously, Ultimate Spider-Man completely takes place in high school.
Yeah, I think that it really helps it because especially in a bigger universe, it frames him as the younger hero.
Yeah.
You know, like in the Marvel universe, he's the younger guy, younger.
And they're even continuing that trend with Miles Morales. He's still, a school kid now that Peter's an adult. But it's just one of those things I never really understood it, and maybe that's because I didn't read a lot of the older stuff. Maybe it was a bigger deal than I'm remembering. And I mean, I love Ultimate Spider-Man, and that's all high school, but like I thought it was okay in the Tobey Maguire movie. Like, yeah, we see high school, we see him get older. I mean, he obviously is an adult in high school, but
what are you gonna do?
It definitely was weird reading this one. It's like, oh, he's just in college right from the beginning, and he doesn't have his powers yet.
No.
I honestly, when I started reading it, I'm like, oh, does he already have his powers? Are we gonna skip an origin?
Which would have been interesting.
Yeah, and I've read a few scripts on the show that were like that. Like, we did Green Arrow, and he was already Green Arrow, but technically, like, it read like a Green Arrow sequel, but it was technically the first Green Arrow movie that they attempted to make.
How do you... Did you think it worked?
Not in that one in particular, but I think that was more what the basis of the script was about, because that was about him going to prison and being locked in with all these supervillains, and it was just like read like a sequel.
That's
and
a lot.
They didn't give you enough of the origin in the movie, because they do kind of flashback a little bit, but I think that idea could work if done well. But
no, but this is a classic Spider-Man story. It so happens that he takes place in college, and there's I think that the supporting cast wasn't helping the whole story.
I think the thing that holds the script back the most is that it's one long first act.
It's so long.
Like, Uncle Ben doesn't get shot until page 77.
I know. I was like, is he all right, my thought was, because we didn't see him I'm like, all right, he's already dead. Like, I thought we were coming into it already dead.
I thought
because I think there's like a reference to May before there's a reference to him. I'm like, okay, so
she shows up at his apartment.
Yes, and acting kind of weird.
Yeah.
The thing I do not like is their Uncle Ben and Aunt May have a good relationship. That's one thing that's very important. That's one thing important to my Spider-Man.
Uncle Ben and Peter have a great relationship.
And here they don't.
It's like they have a scene when we finally first meet Uncle Ben on page like 50. It's like them sitting awkwardly watching TV together. They're sharing beers, and Peter clearly doesn't like the taste of beer.
And he's like, and then he just goes, hey, I feel like I haven't been a good father to you.
Yeah.
And Peter's like, no, you've been all right.
Yeah.
Like,
you look at Amazing Spider-Man, and what's his name? Martin Sheen? Was that who played Uncle Ben?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll go with Martin Sheen. He's kind of dickish in that movie, but you still get a sense of there's a relationship there.
Yeah. They seem like he seems like an awkward uncle he sees at parties.
Yeah, and it's just so weird. And I was like, this, like, it doesn't feel like this close family unit that Spider-Man has always had. And like, you watch the Tobey Maguire movie, that's like the best Uncle Ben there will ever be on film. He was so great.
He was supportive, and like, it makes more sense that pushes Peter than to have like some curmudgeonly old guy that he kind of is.
Yeah, and it's like they have this moment where he's like, I was really disappointed that you were never going to play sports, but when you won this science fair or did something, I was really proud of you. And that's kind of the only positive reinforcement he gives him in the entire movie.
Yeah, it's like, is this the first time he's saying this? This sounds like it happened like 10 years ago. Now he's finally like, I should say something to this kid.
It's so weird. And Aunt May's kind of downplayed in this script. Like, she's not in a whole lot of it.
No, and when she is, she's naggy.
Yeah.
And she feels bad. It's just strange. Like, she doesn't seem to have a good relationship with Ben, and it's a bummer.
Yeah, like there's even a line where they say that Peter has kind of been the referee a lot. That they bicker, not like serious fights or anything, but they bicker a lot, and he has to kind of calm them down. And that's just not the relationship that's ever been portrayed.
Yeah, it just seems very weird, because the whole thing is like it gets destroyed, and that's what he has to deal with. And if that's not what's happening, it just seems I didn't like it. I didn't like that at all.
No, I didn't either. And speaking of like the supporting cast, so we don't have a Mary Jane, we don't have a Gwen Stacy.
No.
We have a Liz Allen, who has she even been in any of the movies?
She might have been in the first Spider-Man movie as like Flash Thompson's girlfriend or something like that. I honestly have not seen the Spider-Man movies for a while.
Yeah, I haven't either. I've probably seen Amazing Spider-Man more recently.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I could see her being one of the high school students, but
Yeah.
I couldn't say more than that. I had to look her up. She was like Spider-Man's first love interest in
Really?
the comics.
Okay, because
Like in
everybody
the
always
old-
talks about Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane, and
Yeah.
I knew about Liz Allen, and I think in the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon, which is fantastic, there was a love interest between him and Liz in that as well. And I know she's in the new movie as like his love interest, I believe.
Oh, interesting.
So I mean, I guess I didn't know. I meant to look that up, but
Yeah, like it sounds like she in the comics she dated Flash Thompson, but Peter was interested in her or something. That I just did like a quick skim because I was like the name sounds familiar, but I couldn't place it.
Yeah,
and then I think she really fades in the background when Mary Jane comes around
because she always kind of played one of Mary Jane's friends, I believe, or maybe one of Gwen Stacy. She was always like in there.
Yeah, it's part of their high school group, but yeah,
she was. In Ultimate Spider-Man, she was definitely one of her friends. And I think she became a mutant in Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah, it also looked like some weird stuff happened to her later in life. And like she disappeared for a while. Then like, oh yeah, we have that character. Let's fuck up her life by having something bad happen to her.
Yeah, because I remember in Ultimate Spider-Man, she was very anti-mutant. And then she ended up being one. And that was clearly a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then we also get Harry, which you gotta have Harry.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to be rich because he needs a scholarship.
No mention of his dad or anything at all.
No, I don't even know if they mention his last name.
No, I don't think they do.
Just Harry.
And then
he's a prankster.
Yeah. Well, they definitely mention how he always seems to get out of trouble because we're kind of introduced to him as he's pulling a prank in the school. Which was it like letting pigs run through the library or something?
Letting rabbits and then also letting a rabbit then releasing dogs also something bizarre. Like this is very
basically
dumb
letting
and elaborate.
animals loose in the school.
Yeah.
And then he ends up getting kicked out of school for it. Which it's one of those things where Peter's always like, he'll just always talk his way out of trouble. Which I assume they were going to talk about like, his dad just kind of buys him out of trouble, but it never comes up.
No, they specifically mentioned that he's going to lose his scholarship.
Yeah.
So it's just
which I mean, rich kids could have scholarships, I guess, but they never say. I don't think they say what his scholarship is for. So
no, it just seems odd. Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't really contribute. Like the side characters, aside from Liz, don't really contribute much to the plot.
No,
because it's Liz, Harry, Flash, and Adele. Who
it's just Liz's room. I think she must be an original character.
She has to be.
Yeah, because she's just Liz's hip roommate.
And she's kind of crazy. Like there's one point where Peter's talking to her looking for Liz, and she's talking about a revolution or something.
Yeah,
like,
she's that out there college kid that they got to add in for.
Yeah.
Flash is a high school bully in this movie.
Yeah.
He's just doing the same old.
But they're kind of like friends at the end. I mean, I think it's because Liz is friends with Peter, but at the end they're all like trying to cheer up Peter, and Flash is like hanging out with them.
But
talking
he's
about
bad at it too. He's also being antagonistic because it's like, it's after his uncle dies, and he's just cheer up, whatever. Like,
let's just get some beers.
Yeah.
Like, Parker doesn't have any beers here. Like,
he comes with, but yeah, he's a dick.
Yeah. But there was a weird moment where they definitely seem to kind of not like each other at all. But then later they are hanging out. So it's like, maybe they just have one of those weird relationships, or maybe it's just because of Liz. But then he kind of seems to be like, Liz seems to just kind of toss him aside at the end without ever, because they're dating, but there's never like a breakup scene, but all of a sudden she's hanging out with Peter.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's
happened off screen. I don't know. Yeah,
there's a lot of things that happen off screen in this. Especially a lot of things with the villain, who is Doc Ock in this version. So we covered a Spider-Man script previously. It was like the 5th episode, and it was a script. So this script was in 1983. At the time, Canon Films, who is most known for putting out tons of fucking B movies in the 80s. Like, I think they did all those Chuck Norris movies.
I think so, yeah. There's a documentary on them on Netflix.
I really want to see it. Is it still on Netflix?
I don't know. It was on my queue.
It's supposed to be really great. Yeah. I've heard people talk about it. But yeah, they basically went under because their whole thing was just make as many movies as you can for as cheap as you can, and maybe one will hit. And they eventually just went out of business, I think, as film stock or something. Like, I hear it's a really fascinating story, but basically they own the rights to, I think, Spider-Man and X-Men. And they went out of business, so they sold the rights to the company that then put out Terminator 2, who I'm totally blanking on that. But basically, James Cameron was going to do an X-Men movie, but then the story is that they were telling him about X-Men, but then he heard about this Spider-Man thing. He's like, oh, well, what's Spider-Man? So they explained Spider-Man to him, and they said, oh, he didn't want to make an X-Men movie anymore. He wanted to make a Spider-Man movie.
Sure.
So then he wrote a treatment for a Spider-Man movie that we covered on the show, and that actually never happened, and then got rewritten in 1993 by Andrew Kevin Walker, and that script, like 60% of it matches the movie we got in like 2001 or 2002, whenever that movie came out. So this was essentially the first version of a Spider-Man movie.
Interesting.
And
it felt like it.
Yeah. There are some things that carry over. So like Doc Ock was the villain up until that 1993 draft. I think he was minor in the 1993 version, and actually I think he was taken out between the James Cameron one, because I think James Cameron was Electro and some other person that was kind of nameless, and then and then put back in for the 1993 movie, but he was kind of like a side villain to the Green Goblin, and the movie ends without any resolution with his character. But in this, he is just the singular main villain. Yeah,
there's only one villain of the movie, which I mean is, for an origin story, not a bad thing. Keep it simple. Yeah. I mean, his origin story is pretty simple, I think.
It's interesting the way it ties into Peter's origin.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing is he's a university professor, and he's working on something. I think he's trying to find like a singularity or something. Like,
yeah, something with anti-gravity, something,
matter. Basically, like, discovering the origin of the universe or something. And he ends up, like, causing an explosion, which, melts the things to his body. The Waldos, as they're constantly referred to. Oh, my God,
is the word Waldo used so much in this script.
And the way it comes up later, we'll get there. But, yeah, but because he's running this experiment, and they actually have a pretty interesting, because the movie opens on Doc Ock, and it opens on like a spider, and the camera keeps panning out, and you see that you're in his laboratory or whatever, and that spider later falls into this beam as he's causing his experiment, which irradiates the spider and then causes the explosion. And so the way Peter gets his powers is we get introduced to J. Jonah Jameson, who the bugle in this is kind of like the Enquirer, I think that's dirt rag full of like bullshit.
That didn't bother me so much. I think it made it kind of more realistic that a high school student would kind of be going around, or a college student would be just kind of freelancing crazy pictures for him.
Yeah. To me, it was weird that Peter was working for him before he was Spider-Man. I don't know if that was ever the case in the comics. I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know how he got the job, but sure.
Yeah, but it's basically like, whale man found in the sewers, like type bullshit rag of a paper.
Yeah.
And he wants Peter to go in and get pictures of the mess of the science lab, and while he's in there, he gets bit by the spider. But we see the science lab, and it's like things are melted. It's like a mouse melted into his wheel.
It looked terrible.
Oh, it looks so bad.
The mouse melted into the wheel thing grossed me. I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
There was descriptions like there's a bunch of animals melted in a bunch of things. I'm like, gross.
Like, essentially, it's like the whole area became liquefied and things just kind of shifted, and then it like froze again.
Yeah, and there's some real, that's the gross description, but there's a lot of description of like everything's melting and things are, and I'm like, there's no way, especially Canon Films of all places,
in 1983,
anything close to this.
No, and it's very clear. I'm sure they were happy to get rid of this.
Yeah.
But the actually interesting thing to note is this script comes with a note attached to. I don't know if you read that. But there's like a note attached to the front from like a studio executive saying that they love the Spider-Man script, but the Captain America script is garbage. Side note, I found that Captain America script, so we will probably do that one someday.
I was like, this is a good omen at the beginning. First note of the script.
That was really interesting. I think I have a couple scripts that come with like notes like that before. I mean, if you really want to read some interesting stuff, go read the Sony hacked emails from what's WikiLeaks or whatever. That's some fascinating shit, just to see the way they talk to each other. So that their origin is tied together, which pretty much always happens with Spider-Man. No matter who's telling the story, it's somehow tied into some villain.
It works because it's like, why is this kid around irradiated spiders? I guess.
Yeah,
it always helps to have it.
To me, it was better in Ultimate Spider-Man with being Oscorp and the Green Goblin.
Yeah.
But Doc Ock was kind of there too in that one.
I will say, Peter doesn't seem very smart in this one.
No, it was when I was nearing the end. There's no reference to him being like a science genius. The closest you get is he makes his web shooters.
And he doesn't seem to make them very good.
No.
He seems to just like roll glue, like put a bunch of glue. I think it's just like he figured out like how to make glue a different consistency, and now he's got web shooters.
And like all of the Spider-Man scripts I've read have some form of web shooter. I think in the James Cameron one, it was actually they were organic, and he had like a thing that popped up out of his wrist and would shoot web.
Gross.
And he made a web shooter like as a fake thing to like make people think, because this script
that he wasn't a Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, this script and the James Cameron script have something in common where he becomes a TV star, which is from some form of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Because like we get our wrestling. So he gets his powers, and then they kind of take effect immediately.
Oh yeah, he's like walking out and he's Spider-Man.
Yeah, and I don't like that. I like how he at least had to take a nap in this Tobey Maguire movie.
Yeah, I thought it was really strange. Like
because it's literally
so immediate.
Yeah, he literally walks out of the school and his glasses like don't work, and it's like you get that glasses scene. It's like, that's weird. And then there's a scene in this one in the 1993 script that we covered that's almost identical, where he almost gets hit by a car or a bus, and he jumps like 20 feet up in the air and sticks to the side of a building. Somehow nobody notices. And he's
Yorkers.
Like, yeah, honestly, it's so true though. But he's like holding on to like a drainage pipe or whatever, and he finds that he's crushed it, so he knows that he's strong. And that scene is almost identical in the 1993 script. The only difference is Mary Jane is like calling out to him and almost watches him get hit by this bus and totally ignores that he just disappeared. And it's like, whatever. And that made no sense. But that scene actually worked better in this script because they don't have anybody watching him, and just the way the scene is described is a little better. I kind of like that a little bit. But yeah, it is weird that it's just immediate.
Yeah, it happens super quickly. He is Spider-Man.
Yeah, and right after that, he calls poison control. And it's like, hey, I got bit by a radioactive spider. Like, would this give me spider powers? And they just think he's a crazy guy. And they're like, yeah, we're just going to send the fucking guys in white coats to come get you.
Yeah, that's why I started to be like, Peter doesn't seem that smart. He seems to be struggling in school. Like, he's always, like, needing extensions for papers. And sometimes he has good reasons, but, but he always seems to be needing extensions for papers.
Yeah.
His web shooter stuff isn't that good. There's no, like, mention of him being a science genius or anything like that. Yeah, his web shooter things are fine. It just seemed weird.
There's just none of the characters seem really representative of who they are in the comics, except for maybe Doc Ock. But even him is just like, he has very little dialogue, very little motivation.
He just wants to do his science.
Yeah, which is similar to Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
But one thing that all these other scripts I've read have failed about Doc Ock is Spider-Man 2 humanizes him. He starts off as a good guy who just gets wrapped up in not misunderstood, but he gets lost in his devotion to his project. Yeah. And it's similar in this, but he's kind of a dick the whole time.
Yeah, he's a dick the whole time. It doesn't do it.
When you're introduced to him, they mention he's in the lab, he's chain smoking, he's disgusting, he's eating like gross 7-Eleven hot dogs. Like, they describe him as like the most disgusting human being. Yeah. And yeah, so it's just like, I don't really care about him. And then it's just a lot of him walking around and they don't show you anything that he does.
I was expecting Peter to be his undergrad like assistant or something.
Yeah, there's no connection there at all.
No.
And they have a couple other doctors. These are teachers, I guess. Thorkel and Roz are their names. Yeah. And Roz is the only one that kind of serves a real purpose.
Kind of a little bit of Peter's mentor. Not
even
he's
mentor, but just they know each other. They run into each other.
Yeah.
And he more runs into him as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of Spider-Man, there's very little of him as Spider-Man in the script.
Well, it takes a very long time to get there.
Yeah. Well, like we said, Uncle Ben doesn't get shot until page 77.
Yeah.
And the script was like 130 pages, which is pretty long. But
also, his spider sense seems to be so much more psychic.
I actually have that in my notes, that it's more like psychic premonitions.
Yes, because it's not like I sense danger is coming, I should turn around and stop this.
No, he's seeing visions of something happening. and it's very specific, related to him,
and pretty far in the future. Like not like it's gonna happen in seconds. I should turn around. It's like this is going to happen tomorrow. Maybe?
Yeah, like so he does the wrestling thing, and then he gets on TV and he's out partying, and he's having visions of Uncle Ben being shot like hours before it's happening.
It's very I thought that was very. I feel like they didn't maybe understand what that was supposed to.
Or they're
represent.
They're trying to do it differently or something. I don't know. Yeah. It's not the Spider-Man we've ever heard before, but I don't know. I do find it funny that when he does the wrestling thing, he's just wearing like a fly mask, like no particular spider related thing, and he ends up he buys it from a costume store, goes and does the wrestling thing. Who they straight up name drop it's Hulk Hogan that is wrestling.
Ambitious.
And which I mean 80s. You know, I don't know when he did that Rocky movie or whatever. Yeah. Maybe they could have got him. But and then he has dialogue in the movie too, which is hilarious.
Yeah, he like talks to Peter and everything.
Yeah, and I love that it's just like Hulk Hogan, which didn't the X-Men script we read have a similar thing where they name drop a celebrity? I can't remember who it was.
It was at like the restaurant or something. They named dropped.
It was when Beast got pulled over. Xavier has him. The cops see.
Oh yeah, shit.
And it's like a big. Oh, it was Mel Gibson.
It was Mel Gibson.
Yeah, so that was kind of a similar thing. I laughed. But yeah, so I'm trying to we've kind of been jumping all over the place. Yeah. I'm trying to
it's because it's a pretty basic formulaic story. I think that's kind of
it is, but it's just the way it's written. It's the first act goes on forever.
Yeah,
I was so bored and that was my biggest problem because once he becomes Spider-Man, he gets the costume designed by the same store that he bought the fly mask at after the wrestling event.
And I like that they have him buy two. Because I'm like, he's gonna totally throw one away,
and I should have seen that coming.
I knew
it. It wasn't until he threw it away. It's like, oh, he's got the other one.
So he can have his big hero moment of picking it back up. Like, come on, guys.
But that was another correlation between one of the other scripts because one of the other scripts he buys a costume out of a store, and I think it was the James Cameron one because he was already Spider-Man at that point. He threw away his costume and he quit because he has to do that in like every fucking movie, and then shit starts happening at the end, so he just runs into a costume store and buys a Spider-Man costume because he had become so popular. They're making Halloween costumes, and then he goes and saves the day. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that was fine, but this hey, this guy made this costume for him.
Can you just make two actually?
Yeah, and he's like, wouldn't he give away his identity because he knows who he is? Like he saw him buy the bug mask the first time.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's a real
maybe this is the guy
there.
who just becomes the superhero Taylor.
Yeah, I guess. Which they do have? Oh, I'm reading Gwenpool, and they have a superhero.
Yeah,
Taylor.
There's been a couple instances of that.
But yeah, I don't know. It was definitely I like the idea of him buying one after he's already kind of become famous. But yeah, and then it's like we see him in the Spider-Man suit, basically out partying and on TV, and there's only like 2 action scenes in this entire script. Granted, the action scenes actually sound kind of cool.
Yeah.
But
they're big.
They don't come until the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, he's out partying. He's doing his whole I'm famous Spider-Man thing that he has to be punished for with the death of his uncle.
Yeah. Which, they do the whole thing where he could have stopped the thief and he doesn't. Of
course, yeah.
What was he robbing? I don't remember. I think it was just he was on the street.
It's always so weird to me because, especially in this one, he was hunting down his uncle. He came into the house.
Yeah. Which in the original Spider-Man story, he did invade their home.
Yeah, it always just seems so weirdly specific, especially in this one, because they didn't seem to be close by or anything like that.
No, it was one of those things where I was like, well, this is only like a few hours later. How could he have traveled from the downtown New York to out in the or Queens, I guess is where they live, right?
I always thought that was strange, but and then just shot him.
Yeah, to me it made more sense in Amazing Spider-Man where Ben's out looking for him and happens to be in the same area, or in the Tobey Maguire
I was gonna say both ones he's kind of out doing something. He runs into the guy.
In the comics, it was in their home, and even in Ultimate Spider-Man, I believe that's what it was as well. It was a totally random home invader, and I think in Ultimate Spider-Man, I don't even know if it was somebody he didn't stop. Maybe it was. I don't remember. It might have just been he wasn't.
That story.
Yeah, it might have just been one of those things where he wasn't there and he felt responsible, but it had to have been somebody he didn't stop at some point.
Yeah, I think so.
And that because that's pretty much been every version of it. So.
Yeah. What's interesting here is he does not say with great power comes great responsibility.
It's on the side of a building. It's like a mantra, just like spray painted
it's a
or
hot
engraved.
tip in New York.
Yeah.
Like, hey, with great power comes great responsibility.
Which is something that always bothered me because they don't say it in Amazing Spider-Man either. Uncle, and that was their way of trying to differentiate it, but it's like you need that line.
And without the relationship of Uncle Ben and Spider-Man, because they have like a shitty relationship, he doesn't even drop that piece of advice. He doesn't
like I said, there's no advice. There's like they have that one awkward conversation in front of the television, and there's nothing. And it's like, why should we care aside from the fact that we know that that's the story?
Yeah.
Honestly, you get more reason to care about Aunt May because she's trying to take care of him. She shows up to his apartment, is making him food.
Yeah.
But even then, and like when Uncle Ben dies, she almost dies, which is, kind of abrupt.
Yeah, that's a lot to put on, I think, for the little relationship that there is between them, to have them both kind of be in a crisis. And I wondered if there was going to be a thing with Doc Ock, like going to a hospital or whatever. I don't know.
I mean, they ended up doing that with the Green Goblin.
Yeah, so that's why I kind of thought, are they doing something like that to kind of start tying everything so we can save her?
Yeah.
But no, she gets better from her heart attack.
Peter doesn't even really interact with Doc Ock until the last 30 pages.
No. There's, what did you think of the character of Liz Allen?
There was a lot of rough dialogue, which
they tried so hard to make her seem sassy.
Yeah, and there was trying to be like some witty dialogue with them. Like it seemed like they're supposed to have this cute little thing where, because they're friends, and it's like they have this cute little thing where they make fun of each other.
It came off, unless they had like the best chemistry, it would have come off as so nasty.
Yeah,
because it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't good.
Well, we read in the 1993 script, Mary Jane was a bitch. Like, she was the worst version of Mary Jane I've ever read. I can't even remember all the shit, but it was just like she just didn't care about Peter and only cared about Spider-Man, but still cared about Flash and treated him like dirt. Yeah. And at least in this one, I felt like, okay, it's supposed to be a jokey thing, and you can clearly tell they like each other, but she's with Flash, and it's like, why don't you just dump the loser? But it is what it is, and it felt very forced with like, oh, let's try to make this character witty. And I don't know, there was a couple good lines, but overall it was just like, this is really rough.
Yeah, and Spider-Man, like, one of his main hallmarks is he's with the witty lines while fighting crime.
Yeah.
And at one point in this one, he saves a fat lady and says, well, you should go on Weight Watchers. I'm like,
yeah,
real good.
It was not
really good, man.
I did screenshot one of their conversations, and it's Liz saying, fill in the blank. I blank Elizabeth Allen. And Peter's like, and she's like, well, good start. And he's like, I loathe Elizabeth Allen, like, despise. And she's like, oh, well, I hate I hate you and everyone who looks like you. I hate the platonic idea of you. I hate people with or some word I can't pronounce. I hate your relatives. I hate your coffee. I hate your shoes. And like, it's supposed to be cute, but it's like, if you didn't know that, it comes off real nasty.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that those relationships are hard to portray unless it is really like with a smile and witty, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Otherwise,
like you said, if they had great chemistry, it could totally work.
Yeah. Otherwise, it just comes out as nasty, and it like, why would you want these people to get together, you know?
Yeah,
like, because I think he was definitely better off with her than nasty Mary Jane, but that you're talking about.
God.
But yeah, there were no other female characters besides her roommate in this movie, who was
just like a crazy person.
Yeah.
And there was definitely moments throughout this script where I was like, oh yeah, 1983. Like, they mentioned some fashion stuff and just, I guess, kind of the portrayal of characters, and like, I don't want to say portrayal of women because no one's really shit on, but just like their role in the movie is very much of the time.
Yeah, it's what you think it would be for a 1983 movie.
Yeah, and it was like some of the other scripts I've read a little more timeless. Like James Cameron could have taken place at any time. The 1993 script almost matches the movie we got in 2000 whatever year that. I can never remember what year that movie came out. I want to say 2001.
I think it was.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, none of the side characters did anything for me.
No.
And honestly, none of the main characters did either. They're just not the interpretations. They're not the versions we've ever seen. And it just felt like a lot of people who don't understand Spider-Man wrote this.
Yeah, it seemed like they read a couple comics and said, I want to make these characters cooler by making them, putting more conflict into their like relationships.
Yeah.
And it just came up like, well, you didn't do those characters then.
Yeah, it's kind of like how in Amazing Spider-Man they made him a skateboarder, and I'm just like, this doesn't feel like Peter Parker. Like a nerdy kid who can skateboard this good would not be a nerdy kid, you know, because he was better than some professionals I've seen. Yeah, and I just felt like, what am I even going to talk about on this script? Because nothing happens for so long. And then when stuff does happen, it's off screen. Like we know that Doc Ock is trying to recreate his experiment. We see him trying to buy supplies and he doesn't have money. And then we hear that off screen he robbed an armored truck. Like, I don't think they don't even show it.
No, it was like a super quick. Like, and then he has the money. He goes back, and the guy's impressed. He has all the money.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, well, there's all these like cyclotrons around the city that he needs to do this experiment, but he couldn't possibly use the one at the school because he doesn't have the stuff he needs to fix that. Except the Waldos that are attached to his body that we've known about the whole time. Why didn't I think of that?
It's so funny because they go, it's so destroyed he could never use it. He would need like 4 more arms. Oh my god!
It's so like, oh, you mean the arms you know that he's been attached to for the last 2 hours?
Also, they really want you to use the word Waldos. To the point where someone in the movie corrects someone else. One of the presidents go like, so he's got like what, 4 arms? Waldos.
Yeah.
Like, what the?
I legitimately laughed when I read that. I was like, oh my god.
Like, God, the guy who wrote this learned a new word, and you are gonna learn it so too.
Great. So we get our first. So literally, we get like them fighting, a little bit of Peter beat up, and Liz taking care of him, and then the end action scene.
Yeah.
And that's the. So we get this 77-page first act, and then we get a like 4-page second act, and then third act. And it just feels so crammed, and like at this point I was so bored. I'm like, when is anything going to happen? Yeah. And we get our first action scene between them at a very cliched toxic waste dump, like literally barrels on the ground with green liquid all over the place. So
they could shoot it like right after a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie stopped
seriously.
shooting.
Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I don't know if you know this is their origin is based off Daredevil, but it felt like they could have spun it off of Spider-Man from this movie. And like the first encounter is like it's okay. Like it's a couple your typical hold him up against something with an arm as he's dodging the other arms, the Waldos, coming at him, and then throwing toxic waste at each other. And I don't know, it ends pretty abruptly when Roz shows up and starts to help Spider-Man and Doc Ock kind of like they get this idea that he sees Roz and all of a sudden starts regretting his actions.
It doesn't make sense, the character, because that he's been there the whole time
and he's been an asshole.
Yeah, and he's
like we see Doc Ock with these other doctors in the beginning of the movie. He doesn't seem to care about them at all.
No, he seems to actively just hate them because they're trying to fuck with. He just wants to be alone with his anti-gravity.
Yeah, he just wants to do his experiments. He doesn't want anyone to bother him. Yeah. And all of a sudden he's distracted by this guy, and it made no sense.
No.
And yeah, so
it was too late to put humanity in him in the third act.
Yeah. And not to mention, we literally only get dialogue from him that's like grunting and calling Spider-Man annoying. And then like, I need money when he finds out he doesn't have money to buy this stuff.
Yeah, I need to do science. I need to get money. It's like those
are literally his only dialogue in the movie.
Yeah, he's focused on the one thing, and they don't give him anything else to do. Yeah,
and he's absent for a big part of the movie. He spends like after he gets kind of fused to the arms, it's kind of a while before he wakes up.
Yeah, because they have to do like a lot in that time, which is Peter does a lot of stuff. Ben.
Yeah, like you think to Spider-Man 2 when they did Doc Ock, they have like 3 or 4 encounters in the movie. Like they have the one at the bank, the one on the train, their final encounter at the end. And technically when the experiment is going wrong and they kind of, he only whips them a little bit, but they encounter each other multiple times throughout the movie. And this is like he wouldn't even know who Spider-Man is, but he shows up and is calling him by name at the end of the movie.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense for them to have. It seems weird that like they even are in the same place to do any, like even when Peter like first encounters him, I'm like, why?
Yeah, and their first encounter definitely comes out of nowhere.
Yeah,
it makes a little more sense the second time around, but even then, it's like, oh, how did he find him? How did he know he was at the school?
Yeah, it's like this is the good guy, this is the bad guy. Shit, we forgot to put them in the same place.
Yeah.
Like,
and I actually skipped our first action scene, which is when Peter saves the people on the bus or the train. So when Doc Ock first did his experiment, there's kind of been some fluctuations in reality, I guess, around the city. Like a train gets teleported to the Himalayas or something, and then another train, like the ground becomes liquid and the train shoots out of the track into a building, and then Peter has to help those people out of the building, out of the train, which is a cool scene. But the whole
probably makes good use of his it visually would make good use of his Spider-Man powers. You could see where it worked,
and it's kind of our first time seeing him as Spider-Man for real. But again, it doesn't happen until like page 84 or something like that. Other than that, we just got the wrestling scene. That's literally the only action scene.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that I think the reveal of the actual Spider-Man costume isn't like...
It's not a big moment.
No,
or
because
anything.
that's the nice thing about the Tobey Maguire one is he has the shitty Spider-Man costume to be that character for when he's being shitty Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And then he becomes better Spider-Man and he's got the better costume.
Yeah, and we see the montage of him taking down criminals, and there's just nothing like that in this movie.
Yeah, this one he's like, all right, well now I'm Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's like right before he goes to attack Doc Ock for the final time, he stops like 2 looters because like the whole city's lost power.
Melting,
so there's
whatever.
Yeah, a couple of people looting some places, and he takes down a couple, and he's like, "Oh, there's no time for this," and then he goes and encounters Doc Ock. Which the final encounter is kind of interesting. So Doc Ock goes to the school where it's using that cyclotron because he has the Waldos. He can fix it. And he gets his experiment going, and the building lifts up out of the ground and starts levitating like really high up, is what they basically say. It's in the clouds, which is a little too high, but I like the idea of the building being lifted up and them fighting in the building.
I mean, the science at this point is just we need to create things that look cool, so let's float this building.
Yeah, there's no explanation for it, but it's a cool set piece for like an action scene.
Yeah.
And of course Liz is in the building because she's out looking for Peter. So we kind of get our tender moment with them. Like he comes home from the first encounter with Doc Ock and he's all beaten and bruised. And so she like kind of rushes everybody else out of the apartment and she's helping him and kind of confesses her love as he's falling asleep, which is kind of to me the only good moment between them in the whole script. Maybe this and the very ending scene.
Kind of lets her walls down and everything.
Yeah, because
it's something. It's
nothing special, but it's your average love encounter scene. So up in this script, it's the best writing in the script.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when he wakes up, he puts on his suit because he sees that everything's going crazy, and he goes out there. Liz follows him and ends up in the science building. So you got to have your damsel in distress, add a little something to the end action scene. So it's basically Spider-Man and Roz trying. It was hard to keep track of everything going on in this scene, but basically Doc Ock's trying to do the experiment and they keep fucking with him, and Roz is trying to help Spider-Man like do this so he can't do that or whatever, and Liz is just in the building as shit's happening and they don't know. They eventually somehow a hole gets blown in the floor and Spider-Man dives through the hole and Doc Ock goes after him, and this is what I like about it is they're hanging from the outside of the building as it's floating, and they're kind of fighting around the outside of the building. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
And as this is going on, Liz, I guess the building shifts or something, and Liz like almost falls out a window, and so Peter ends up finding her and catching her. And he's just kind of battling Doc Ock because he's trying to keep Liz safe. He gets her in the building, and then I don't even remember what happens with Doc Ock. How does he...
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I remember. They get back because this is ridiculous. They get back inside the room where the experiment's going on, and basically he tricks Doc Ock into like ramming his arms and stuff into the beams and the way where all the experiment science is happening.
Yeah.
And that basically rips open a black hole and sucks him in and then disappears. And then the city's back to normal. All the science has stopped for some reason, and the building starts to plummet.
Yeah, that's one way to get rid of a villain, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know. It just seemed like I think they probably didn't want Spider-Man to kill anyone, but they want him to be gone.
I'm trying to remember. He never really kills a villain in any of the movies.
No, because he's supposed to be younger, more innocent,
Yeah, which has Spider-Man ever killed anybody in the comics as far as anyone remembers?
Probably, but I couldn't
because I assume just like as most heroes are, I don't kill people, but I know like Daredevil's killed a person.
Yeah.
They always come back anyway. But yeah, and I don't even remember. I thought there was going to be a little more of an exciting moment of them escaping the plummeting building, But I think they just kind of jump out and web swing away with little to no issue, even though you would be rocketing at such a high speed. Because they say, because the building falls into Central Park in like the pond. Which, how did they get to Central Park?
I was just moving the whole time. They didn't mention that.
Peter just jumps out and swings them to the ground safe. There's no like, they hit the ground and tumble. It's just like, no, they just land on the ground safe.
Hey,
and and they watch the building fall into the pond. And that's pretty much it. We get literally in my notes I said the only good part of this script is the ending, because as ridiculous as the science stuff is, I do enjoy the final battle. I like everything that kind of happens there up until the point where the black hole happens.
Yeah, they could have found a better way to end that.
Yeah, and then we kind of get our moment with Liz and Peter where they say they like each other and they kiss. Nobody finds out he's Spider-Man.
Nope.
There's no real hook for a sequel or
Flash
anything like
thinks
that.
Spider-Man is cool.
Oh, yeah. And it's his connect. Like, how does he know everything? Because, like, multiple times throughout the movie, he, like, towards the end, he comes with a newspaper where a newspaper is trashing Spider-Man. He's like, no, this is what really happened. And he's 100% right about everything he's saying. But how would he know? He was never there for anything. There's nobody talking about it.
He's just a big Spider-Man fanboy. He's going to defend him.
Flash was a big Spider-Man fan in the comics, which has always kind of been an interesting part of that character. Actually, recently I was reading, I think it's Spider-Man Back in Black, where that's one where Aunt May gets shot and he's kind of dealing with it. In that story, because it's after Civil War, so everybody knows who he is, and so him and Flash are kind of buddies, and there's like a moment where he's like crashing at Flash's place, and like I like the dynamic of the high school bully is like the kid he bullies is his idol and he doesn't know it, and I like the idea of him knowing in that story, but we never learn why he likes Spider-Man.
Spider-Man's a cool guy. He's a cool guy.
But like he likes him from the point where he saw him on TV when he was on the talk show.
Yeah.
And it's like he didn't do anything heroic. Like
no.
The idea is Flash loves him because he's a hero. But he was on TV and Flash thinks he's cool.
And he's going to defend him through all this stuff.
With all this information that he somehow knows. It's a mess.
Yeah, it was not a good script.
No. I actually felt bad making you read this one.
I feel like it went pretty fast because I'm like, I know what's happening.
I felt like it crawled. I was literally just like, I was thinking about finding a Wikipedia or something that might have this information.
Yeah, I think I went through it fast, so maybe I skipped a couple lines. I'm like, I know what's happening here. Bad dialogue, like Spider-Man stuff.
I've just never seen a script with such a long first act. And it really bogged it down.
It was the worst of kind of like that origin story trope where nothing happens, but then you gotta have a villain. Like
I would compare it, even though I like this movie because I think they handled it better. The Power Rangers movie that just came out. It's better broken up this way because for one, it's better written. There's a lot of I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I actually want to now. I saw you guys watching it the other day.
I bought it on Blu-ray. If you want to borrow it, I'll let you borrow.
Awesome.
I'll bring it. It's actually I really like it. It's got its hokey moments. There's not a lot of action in it. All the action, like you basically watch that movie for the last 20 minutes. Okay. But on the way there's a lot of great character moments. There's a lot of great writing. There's some hokey, jokey stuff for the kids in there. Elizabeth Banks is kind of acting like she's in a different movie, but it works. She's great.
That's what I saw. I saw the
she's real over the top. But the thing is, all the kids in the movie are really great. They're all a bunch of no-name actors, and they're amazing. But yeah, there's not a lot of action in that movie, but that movie's not boring.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
They give you interesting characters, interesting stories.
And also, it's just not Power Rangers, a lot more characters than just like a Spider-Man relationship that anyone who knows Spider-Man stuff kind of knows what's going to go.
Yeah, and even then, Spider-Man and Liz don't spend a lot of time together. At least you look at the Tobey Maguire movie, MJ has a thing for Spider-Man, and doesn't like she kind of has a thing for Peter, but there's a Spider-Man guy. In this, Liz never even mentions Spider-Man, never encounters him. It's just her and Peter. And even then, she goes on like vacation at one point with Flash, and she's not even here for a good part of the script.
Yeah, it wasn't the most compelling of girlfriends.
Yeah, we spend 90% of this script with Peter, and he's just not doing anything. No,
he's a pretty bland character.
Yeah, and it's just there was no real good dialogue in the entire thing. It felt snappy. Very first draft.
Yeah, it could have been definitely improved. I if it was ever made. The thing that was a bummer is like, okay, if they put in good dialogue and they could actually do some of this stuff and kind of like shifted, like made the first act shorter, I'm like, maybe it could have been a good movie. But then I think of what it would have looked like, especially as a canon film. Like,
that's one of my favorite things about reading these old
they
superhero
wouldn't have
scripts,
made
though.
anything close to this movie.
No, because that X-Men script we read was like 93, 91, somewhere in there. And that was another thing. It's like, oh, I would love to have seen how they would have done this in the time.
I don't think they would. I know the guy said in the first like page of it, the letter that he liked it. I'm like,
yeah,
it would.
I'm really curious what that Captain America script is like now.
That shitty Captain America script. Yeah,
I have it. I'm gonna have to thumb through it.
And I'm just like, this movie wouldn't have been made. Definitely not the better version that I would have thought about.
If you think about it, this is before Batman.
Yeah.
We had at least probably 2 Superman movies. I don't remember when the first Superman movie came out. I mean, I know they were in the 70s.
Yeah.
I don't know if they stretched into the 80s. I personally don't like those movies, but those were the first big successful superhero movies. And Batman was the one that gave us the formula that every superhero movie followed, and that wasn't until 88.
Yeah.
So there really wasn't a template for movies like this.
Seemed to be a lot of scripts going around, but not a lot of movies being made.
Yeah, I definitely have some older Batman scripts from that time, but I don't know when they first started. And I mean, it's not like anybody would have seen that when they're working on this movie, especially not canon films.
No.
But it's definitely just, it doesn't feel like Spider-Man. It wouldn't have been a good movie.
No.
I would have loved to have wondered what an 80s Spider-Man movie would have looked like.
I just think about his arms and the webs and the swing and the green screen.
I mean, these movies are so effects heavy, and I mean, there was okay special effects in the 80s. Star Wars had happened.
Yeah, but that's the thing also. I feel like you can write a Spider-Man movie that isn't this effects heavy. Even like a Green Goblin, because you don't have to deal with all those Waldos, you know?
Yeah, but like, what would web swinging look like is always the thing I come to when thinking of an old Spider-Man movie. Because that was a
costume would look like a Halloween costume, and
oh god, the costume, I couldn't even imagine. Like, I'm just because I just think of that that 60s Spider-Man live action TV show. I just picture a costume like that, and that you can't make a movie with that.
Well, if you think about it, like the quality of level that like the Superman costume was at. It's
I
pajamas.
guess that's the first example. Yeah, and it looks so cheap. I don't know. It would have been a bad movie. I'm glad Canon Films. I mean, at the same time, it would have been amazing to see Canon Films present Spider-Man. I would have seen it.
Of course.
It'd be like, I feel like we'd look back on it like the way we look on that like Italian Captain America movie or whatever it is, which I've never seen.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Yeah, they put it out on Blu-ray. I've thought about buying it just to, but I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything else for Spider-Man 83?
I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
That's all I got. It's not very good. I definitely wouldn't want to read this again or watch it. But all right, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, no problem.
So are you gonna try to see Spider-Man: Homecoming without Jake?
I will probably see. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna go see it. I just probably not opening weekend movie for me.
You gotta talk to that boy. I don't understand. I'm unfortunately not gonna be able to see it this weekend, but hopefully next weekend. I know my wife wants to see that Tupac movie too, although I heard that wasn't very good. So maybe we'll do a double bill. But all right. So if we see it, maybe we'll sit down and talk about it.
Sounds good.
Because I'm still skeptical. That Tom Holland boy, he might be all right. I don't know. But all right, so that's going to be the end of our show. Do you have anything you need to plug? Really?
Nope,
really?
Nothing.
Sailor Moon. Go out and
watch
buy
Sailor Moon
some
Crystal.
Buy
some merch.
I have one final Sailor Moon question for you.
Okay.
What are their powers?
Well, Sailor Moon's got a rod, and she says the words and spins around, and it kills people. And then each of them has a elemental power, water, fire, lightning.
She's Jupiter's fire, right?
Lightning,
no, Mars is water, fire.
Yep.
And you said they have wands. I remember the wands.
Transformation wands for this. Yeah.
Do they fight? Do they have any fighting capability?
Yeah, limited, but mostly it's shooting powers at people. A couple kicks and that kind of stuff. A lot of jumping.
Okay, I kind of want to borrow the first volume.
I
want to see if I'll bring you Power Rangers.
Yeah, we'll trade. Good trade.
Okay.
90s trade.
Yeah. All right. So yeah. I guess that'll be it. If you want to follow the show on Twitter, you can follow us at Shelved Podcasts, and that's also on Instagram as well. And if you want to email the show, you can email us at shelvedfilmpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about Sailor Moon. What was the thing? Oh, rate and review on iTunes, because that's really helpful, and that helps us a lot. So that's all I got. Maggie, thanks for sitting here talking Spider-Man, and I hope everybody enjoys Homecoming. I'm going to try to see it as soon as I can. But thanks for sitting with me.